next one here. Our next 8-6, on December 31st of 2013, when its allowance for doubtful accounts had a debit balance of $1,400, Hunt Company estimates that 9% of its accounts receivable balance of $90,000 will become uncollectible and records the necessary adjustment to allowance for doubtful accounts on May 11th, 2014. Collectible accounts wrote off on allowance for doubtful accounts. Sorry, guys. On May 11th, 2014, Hunt Company determined that Jay Bird's account was uncollectible and wrote off $1,200. On June 12th, 2014, Bird paid the amount previously written off. Prepare the journal entries on December 31st of 2013, May 11th, 2014, and June 12th, 2014. So the first one on December 31st, we need to, its allowance for doubtful accounts had a debit balance of $1,400. Hunt Company estimates that 9% of its accounts receivable balance of $90,000 will become uncollectible and records the necessary adjustment to allowance for doubtful accounts. So how are we going to handle this one? What was the current balance? The allowance for doubtful accounts had a what kind of balance? Debit or credit? Debit balance. Doesn't that go back to the example we showed on the board previously? Whereas if the debit balance is at $1,400, then look at this, guys. If we've got a debit balance, let's do here, allowance for doubtful accounts. And if we're showing this to be if a debit balance is in here of $1,400 and we want, how much do we want the allowance for doubtful accounts to be? What do we want the balance to be? 9% of 90,000 is how much? 8,100. So what are we going to need to credit to come up with a balance in the allowance for doubtful accounts of 8,100? This is a debit, 9,500. So we're going to want this allowance for doubtful accounts. We're going to need to credit 9,500 to get a balance of 8,100, right? Which means our bad debt expense is at 9,500 and our allowance for doubtful accounts is at what? 9,500. Okay, now if we go back to May 11th, it says, on May 11th, Hunt determined that Jay Bird's account was uncollectible and wrote off $1,200. What are we going to do there? If the account is uncollectible, we're going to debit our allowance for doubtful accounts of $1,200. We're going to write off Jay Bird's accounts receivable of, $1,200. We're going to write it off for $1,200. Then it tells us he paid it. So we're going to reinstate his account, credit back the allowance for doubtful accounts of $1,200, show he put the money in of $1,200, and then the accounts receivable is zeroed out. Any questions on that? How are we doing, guys? Okay, now let's look at the next one. 787. Malone Supply Company has the following transactions related to notes receivable during the last 2 months of the year. The company does not make entries to accrue interest except on December 31st. So it loaned $60,000 of cash to B-Car on a 12-month 7% note. Then it sold goods to R.P. Kiner, receiving a $3,600 90-day note, received a $12,000 180-day 9% note to settle an open account, and then it accrued all notes receivable. Okay? So our job is to journalize these transactions. We're not going to worry about cost of goods sold. So the first transaction loaned $60,000 cash to B-Car on a 12-month 7% note. What are we going to do here, guys? Anybody? Is Darren here? Darren, what do you think we're going to do, man? Can someone get a piece of paper going? Do y'all mind doing that for me? Oh, y'all are so good. Golly. Would y'all like to grade my test too?
I want my extra credit first, though.
Okay, yes, you're getting a lot of it, Martin. Okay, so notes receivable is $60,000. Does everyone have this? Notes receivable $60,000, cash $60,000, right? Next, it says sold goods to R.P. Kiner, receiving a $3,600 90-day 8% note. What are we going to do there, guys? $3,600 and sales revenue $3,600. Perfect. Then on December 16th, received a $12,180-day 9% note to settle an open account from M. Adcock. What are we going to do here, guys? Notes receivable $12,006. Get rid of his accounts receivable for $12,600. Now our job is to accrue all interest. We're December 31st, we're finally accruing interest. How are we going to begin this? Do you see the loan on November 1st? $60,000 cash, 12-month 7% note. We need to determine that interest. Well, if you think about it, guys, that interest, $60,000, 7%, it started November 1st. We're at December 31st. 2 months. So do you see, we're going to do a $60,000 times 7% times 2 months out of 12 months equals $700. Kiner's note. How many days do we have on Kiner's note? 20. We don't count the day we create the note, we count the day after until it's paid. So 20 days, we've got 3,600 times 8% times 20 out of 360 days. Then Adcock's note is 15 days. 12,000 times 9% times 6%, times 15 out of 360. So what's our total interest here? $761. Sorry, this is, I don't know what I was thinking. $761 is our accrued interest. Okay? One last 88 and we'll go. Journalize the transactions, oh, excuse me, 88. These transactions took place with Glavin Company. Received a $5,000 12-month 6% note in exchange for an outstanding accounts receivable from S. Rooney. Accrued interest revenue on the S. Rooney note. Received principal plus interest on the S. Rooney note. No interest has been accrued since December 31st. Record the transactions in the general journal. Again, the first thing we'll want to do is record the note receivable. What are we going to do there to record that note receivable? How much? 5,000. The interest receivable on that note, 5,000 at 6% times 8 out of 12 months is going to be how much, guys? Anyone? $225? Close. What's 5,000 times 6%? $300. What's?
It's 200.
200's the answer. Okay, now the next one shows received principal plus interest on the S. Rooney note. So we're going to show interest from January 1st through May 1st, 4 months. So how are we going to record interest from January 1st through May 1st? $5,000 at 6% times a third is $100, isn't it? Plus, we're going to be collecting the $200 that we showed as a revenue earlier, or the receivable as earlier. Plus, our note is going to be $5,000. So shouldn't we be collecting $5,300? Does that make sense, guys? How do you think you're going to be for this test? You think you're ready? We went over that problem, so I would just encourage you guys to look over the problems we've done in class. You've got the solutions up there for you. I'll have the test open for sure by tomorrow, and we'll have it open through Sunday evening. Okay? Are you guys good with that? You guys have a great day.